So haere mai from my heart place to your heart place, Dr. Rebecca, to Heart Place Hospital podcast.
Thank you, kia ora.
Yeah, awesome. And so I always start with how I know the guest, and you and I met in person is pretty close to 8 years ago, actually. It was just as I was in the kind of dust after my Mac trap moment. So that's some people call them, I don't know, breakdowns, whatever, but I always refer to mine. Awakenings, whatever. I always refer to mine as a Mac track. And so we met, and I'd been the nurse manager at Atlantis Healthcare for about 5 years, and that's where it happened for me. So Atlantis Healthcare is a behaviour change, behaviour support, health business for those people around the world. Actually, it's actually international, isn't it? Who have got health challenges, let's say. So I was the nurse manager there, and so I did a really good job, as I do. I'm all or nothing. And I remember reaching out to you, and I'm not quite sure. Were you like an outsider? What were you to Atlantis Healthcare? Was there sort of were you the misfit? Is that who you were?
I coined the business, and my company name is Outlier Limited. So yeah, a bit of a misfit. I tried to get into the mainstream, rejected me. Thank God. Yes. And I escaped the golden handcuffs, but I majored in health psychology. So a lot of my colleagues who typically who'd got the clinical health psychology registration, and they quite a few of them went into work with Atlantis Healthcare. So I kind of you're through that. I think you just found me on LinkedIn.
Did I? Is it? Yeah, I was kind of clawing. I was through that healing journey. I felt just so lost and alone, because I my first steps was the conventional way, so employment assistance program and my GP, because that's all I saw. Even then, it was a real big push, because I didn't see anyone else access those services that were available. But when I took that leap and I accessed those services, I was kind of like, is that it? After 21 years of service, is that it?
Yeah. So yeah. I call it your Mac truck awakening.
Yeah. Well, I'd had lots of messages previous. So I'd been tapped on the shoulder lots.
When we ignore the taps, then we get the Mac truck.
Well, then I had the 4x4s in the back of the head, and then I had the truck. Yeah.
Honestly, I often say, forever saying to people, working as a mental health and habit coach is one of my hats. If you're lucky enough to get non-fatal warning signs that your health has been compromised, pay attention, because not everyone gets them. Like, not everyone gets the non-fatal warning signs. Mm-hmm. And if you keep ignoring them, they're just going to get harder and harder. I literally use the phrase, you're going to get a bit of 4x4 or 4x2 across the shoulders. You don't say shoulders, so we've been using the same phrase, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I just want to introduce you a little bit. So you're New Zealand born and bred, same. Yeah. And you've got a PhD in health psychology. So for those who don't know health psychology, that's the interaction between mental and physical health.
Yes, is that in my bio?
Yeah, but I knew that because I've worked with health psychologists, so I knew that. I already knew that. And your obsession with habit change began when you needed it to get from uni dropout to your PhD. And you've had 8 years volunteering as a Lifeline telephone counsellor. We totally need that. And you have a private practice coaching people on a range of habit change issues, but centering around the panacea of self-love habits, which I love. And you live in gorgeous Taupo. You're a bookworm, a foodie, a gardener, an animal lover. And your current favourite quote is, "The whole is greater than the sum of its parts." Amazing. And I just wanted to add, when I moved north to Mangawhai, you actually connected me with Gavin and Dawn, who I've yogaed next to, and now a very good dear friend of mine and service provider to Heart Place Hospital actually lives in their cottage on their property and uses Dawn's old healing studio. So there's our connection too.
Yeah, the funniest thing. So I'd known Gavin already. I met him fairly soon after Lifeline, and we got on well. And he's an amazing jeweler. And suddenly he calls me out of the day. He calls me out of the blue, and he said, "Is your name? Is your surname Stafford?" I went, "Yeah." And he said, "Is your father's name Ben?" Yeah. He used to be best friends with my father when they were at school, and they'd kind of lost contact.
Wow.
How random is that? So and that they actually met up when decades
Oh,
down. But I think I hope they don't listen to this. But I think they were both a little disappointed because my father had gone a more conservative route, and Gavin had gone the more spiritual healing route. So I think a little bit of a shock. But anyway, just those serendipitous
yeah.
connections. I go on to, I knew, why I knew what we were doing and your plans and dreams that,
Yeah.
you get very aligned with, and connection and community.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're very cool, very, very lovely people. Yeah. So thank you for that. And then as it happens, they've been part of my village since living here. So that's cool. Yeah. And then and then now one of our service providers, so Kat, who's on pretty much every prescription of a visitor that comes to Heart Place Hospital, sees Kat, and she works out of Dawn's studio. So it's just rotating and evolving that way, yeah, which is very cool. So since we kind of caught up, we're LinkedIn buddies, but since we've caught up, which is nearly 8 years ago, and I think I probably talked to you about at the time how disappointed I was in what offers that I got, and then I went on this kind of, well, I went on my own healing journey, and it was there that I was like, wow, gosh, if I don't know this, then does everyone else know this? And so I started just literally having workshops in my lounge. And then it evolved into community centres and speaking in libraries. And I just felt really cool to be the messenger of these learnings that I was having. And then, of course, COVID hit, and then it was really paramount to me that it was those of us who are in these caring roles that we're supported, we're uplifted, we're valued, we're rejoiced, celebrated, all the things, which we haven't had in the past. So that's where I got to after that meeting 8 years ago. Yeah, and so now it's a registered charity, and we offer we offer the podcast so that others can hear the stories that our news and media aren't sharing, that can hear the stories of us who have had the Matt trap moments, and we've come out the other side, and then now we're literally turning around and we're offering water to those who are in the fire next. But hopefully, well, not hopefully, definitely, because that's my vision, is that we won't have the fire. We'll just be stepping through. But I'd love for us to have a chat. Like, how did you get to where you are now? Like, what fires have you had to step through? And maybe even what led you into going into house psychology and doing your PhD as well.
Oh, well, lots of questions there, and it kind of presupposes I know where I am now. and I don't really. And comfortable with that, or you becoming more comfortable with discomfort. And a big thing for me is recovering control freak. Many of us will identify to you, listener. And also as a side, a couple of things, pick up on a couple of things you said. Now, I hope you don't mind me saying, you can always edit it out. When we had our last physical meeting in Newmarket 8 years ago, you were I perceived you as being quite relatively low in confidence and still highly stressed. Yeah, and bleep, look at you now.
I know, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. And, you've got this gorgeous, everyone else who's just like listening, not looking at the video, you've got this gorgeous mandala behind you, which mirrors your dress and the beautiful smile and all lit up. So yeah, talking of, it is a time of transformation and change, and you're walking the talk, so that's lovely. Also, another word you mentioned, how you were feeling at the time, was lonely. And I think a lot of people on this journey will resonate with that. And because there's different ways of looking at my work, and at the core of it is helping people develop habits of unconditional self-love. I don't like to tell people that up front, so that's a secret, so don't tell anyone that. Because in the early stages, that's not what most people are looking for. They're looking for, like, what the hell is that? That sounds like crap anyway. What I need is, they may concede to less stress, but I want better productivity. I want help with procrastination. I want help with energy. My sleep's terrible. I've got relationship problems. I need, how are you going to help me with those things? I do refer to it, but I'll refer to it obliquely, or I'll say what I just told you, which is like, okay, this is kind of at the core of my work, but I'll deny, I'll lie, I'll give a bold-faced lie and say I need to tell you that. I'm challenged on it, because it's about the obviously treating, a shift away from treating the symptoms to treating the cause. And another way of looking at my work is basically I'm really working with chronic stress. And the biggest cause of chronic stress, as I'm sure you know, chronic stress compromises the immune system and, doesn't cause every mental and physical health woe, but it doesn't help anything if your immunity is compromised. And although I often help people with the symptoms, simultaneously is working with the underlying unconditional issues around self-love. But coming back to chronic stress, I think the biggest cause of chronic stress is the lack of self-love, and the symptoms of that, the punitive self-talk and the twin themes of the unbalanced inner critic or unbalanced ego of you're not good enough and who do you think you are? And so, but therefore self-love isn't so the solution. That is the panacea to chronic stress. So I'm going to help people. And the tools I use are super simple, like really, 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 really simple. And I'm happy to leave the listeners with one of the really simple, one of the tools, psychology tools I prescribe the most, has been clinically proven to boost immunity, and it's free. And I want everyone to know about it. But the reason people struggle with this stuff, why aren't they really doing it, is because the tools I use are really simple, but they're not always easy. So sometimes it's easy and fun. I don't want to undersell it. Sometimes the work is easy and fun, and I often get a little laughs with clients and non-clients. But it's when it is hard, and it often is because it's counterintuitive. But it's only counterintuitive because it's countercultural, right? And also, I'm not just teaching people how to do something new. I'm not just teaching them how to, the habits of self-love. We're going to break the habits of self-loathing, unworthiness, all the stuff. So like what I'm doing, the stuff, the guts of what I'm saying is ancient stuff.
Mm.
I didn't invent this. I didn't invent these concepts. But I believe we all, to everyone listening, who feels like, if anyone's listening who's like, how can I contribute? Where's my place? Or someone's already doing it, or I don't have the degrees, I don't have the registrations, whatever. No, we need you. We need you to bring you listening and everyone listening to bring your unique voice to it. And I've got a passion for storytelling, and I bring that to it. I love lifting people up. I mean, my big challenge is like I'm really, 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 really good at doing it for other people. Like, hopefully, you didn't find our first meeting too horrendous. And my big challenge has been, of course, to learn to do it for myself.
Mm.
And I read, you'd be familiar with the hero's journey?
Yep.
Yeah. Joseph Campbell's misogynist videos. No one has to be perfect, right? That's okay. We can pick and choose. And I read someone talking about the hero's journey. I've completely lost my train of thought. Yeah. Yes, I read someone, a Hollywood scriptwriter, and he based on the hero's journey and the mythical and the archetypes and so on, and teaches people to screenwrite for Hollywood using the, basically talking Star Wars here. And they're not little, I can lose that thread in them. Damn it, come back. It's gone again.
Right. You're in good company.
Brain goes out like far ranging.
Yeah.
When I relax, it'll come back to me, but I can't remember about that. But I think that came back to just the loneliness thing. But the loneliness is, of course, a reflection of lack of connection to self. We can't fully allow connection to others. That's until we some connection.
Yeah. And I think with me 8 years ago, I'd never heard that, and I'd never heard that concept, and so I was looking for outside validation, which is what is all I knew all my life, was external validation.
You're the only one who's done that, Jackie. You're the only one who's looking for external.
I know, right?
Thing about that.
Now it Teflon's off me. I mean, it's pleasant, but it Teflon's off me. I'm like, I think someone said the other day, "Keep going, girl," and I'm like, oh, look, I actually don't need reassurance. I'm going. I'm doing this. So it's not reassurance that I need, but what I do need is amplification, so that people can find the work that we are doing. So there's no denying that I need that reassurance anymore. That's for sure.
I think it's partly reassuring ourselves, going back to that inner thing. But also I think it's important not to be complete Teflon. I mean, I think it's sort of like permeable boundaries, right? And I important to celebrate our successes as well, while that. But in terms of, I think, other people's opinions, when it comes to praise or encouragement, I think excuse me, I think it's important to appreciate it and enjoy it, but not rely on it.
Yeah.
So I live by the sword, die by the sword, because of course, if we're, I'm sure most listeners know, the perils of, I emphasize self-love, I emphasize unconditional self-love, because when it's conditional, that's when we're dependent on, external approval or meeting external benchmarks of success, most of which we have very little control over, which of course, can be taken away. And actually coming back to an example of that is with, as I said, Spirit blocked me from the mainstream. So I tried to get in. My dream was to get into my original plan when I returned to university at the age of 35, after having been a university dropout at the age of 18. And my story is I kind of dropped out of first year vet at the Real Palmerston North in Massey. And anyone can do first year vet, but I didn't quite get the straight A's required to get into second year vet. And so I dropped out of uni, and I did do half a year at Victoria University in Wellington. So I dropped that in uni at the age of 19 with a handful of C's, a couple of did not completes, one A in psychology, but the worst of all, I felt like a failure. The loneliest feeling of the world. And funnily enough, and funny, strange, not funny enough, my mother also has a PhD in psychology. Very, very different area. She did something to do with my hearing and deafness in children, so more of the cognitive neuroscience aspect of it. But whereas I was developing commercial elder care robots, but that's another story. I always saw my mother as I described her as having this glittering academic and corporate career and I kind of felt like she had some kind of drive that I didn't have, is what I always felt. Now I refer to that kind of thing as a unaccepted shadow. Like when you can't admire something in somebody else, even if whether it's admiration or envy, if you don't have it in yourself already. So not quite a suppressed shadow, more an unacknowledged shadow. You cannot, we are all everything, and you cannot admire something or envy something in others if it's not a part of you. Yeah. But apparently she failed. My mother actually, I saw her as having sort of drive that I didn't have. I sort of see myself as being a bit more laid back like my father. And turns out I did have a lot of drive like my mother, and I wasn't nearly as laid back as I thought. I like to believe. But yeah, apparently my mother actually failed her first year of university, and I only found that out half a dozen years ago. If I had known that at the time, when I felt like a failure, so I certainly had suicidal ideation. It was just horrible. I mean, speaking of chronic stress, I think, profoundly social species, it's not just our opposable thumbs that make us the dominant species on the planet. Although some debate. Depends how you define dominant. Our gigantic sort of prefrontal disproportionately, large prefrontal cortex to navigate all those complex social relationships in our tribe to stop us getting chucked down to the tribal cave and eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So it's a real, when I'm working with people with deep anxiety and terror, which may seem out of proportion to whatever's going on. Like, I know it's not. It's real. It's a very this fear of rejection from the tribe and not the themes of the unbalance and the critic, not good enough, but insecure. It's a very real psychological terror, because they'll have a lot of people outside of them who don't understand it, saying, "Oh, they'll be fine. Well, why are you so bothered by this?" Or, whatever. And you'll get over it, or really the kind of intentions that paves the road to hell, like really well intentions, but really invalidating. Really invalidating advice. Basically, the subtext of which is you shouldn't feel the way you feel. So I do a lot of validating. I'm given a lot of permission, especially over my 8 years of volunteering as a Lifeline counsellor. A lot of permission for people to feel, they actually have the meta emotions like guilt over having depression or very stressed or anxious about having anxiety or whatever, especially the depression. A lot of the, I don't like this term being used in a pejorative way, but to people who are listening to this, they're not on video, I'm waving my fingers and morning quotes, the worried well. I don't like that being used in a pejorative term, but there's a lot of callers who had at Lifeline, who had all the stuff, the house, the career, the money, the 2.3 kids and a picket fence and a Labrador. And they were depressed, and they felt, all these emotions. They felt guilty about depression. It was I've got so much stuff, and all these other people, but nothing, and I shouldn't feel guilty. I've got so much. They were panicking because they had done everything they were told to. They jumped through all the hoops and achieved all the status and that, and they were still not happy. They still didn't feel good enough, and they whatever. And so, what else is there? I've done everything, and like, what else is? They're panicking, also angry because they got cheated. Everything I was supposed to, and it hasn't always. I still feel terrible. I still feel terrible about myself. I said, I just explained, like, I'm really sorry. You've been sold a lemon. Like so many other people, but it was certainly preached to me. I mean, as if I'm reading that. Nothing wrong with money. Money's wonderful, and many of us healers and therapists and creatives I've had massive problems with money in terms of the other way around, like feeling very uncomfortable accepting money in exchange for healing people, especially after doing jobs for free for 8 years at Lifeline as well, and it really enjoying it. It's a lot of me talking. Was resonating with you?
Oh, what keeps coming to me is I'm just curious. Like, I know when I started talk therapy, everything academically made a lot of sense, but actually putting it into action was a real challenge. And it wasn't until like when we're referring to that comment before, like I know that my self-love radar has increased because I can feel it in my body. It's not just I love myself. It's actually, I actually feel it throughout my body. And I'm just really curious, like with your clients and the work you do, and for yourself even, like, how do you support yourself and them to embody it, put it in the body, embody it?
I'm so pleased you asked that question. Like you say, that shifting from that intellectual understanding to that knowing, that full body knowing, full body in body and out of body knowing, that comprehensive, encompassing knowing. I think it started with around the same time I met you. A
pivotal time in our lives.
Have to look at the astrology around it. A colleague and kind of energy worker, Toastmasters, we're having a conversation, and she sort of asked me, seemingly out of the blue, we were riffing about psychology, counselling and whatnot. And I also felt I was really startled by this question, but like, where the hell did that come from? And she asked me, "Do you love yourself?" I was like, "Oh," quite taken aback. And I was deeply immersed in Brene Brown's work as I was for many years, and probably like creators. Probably one of the most formative influences in my personal and professional growth. And so this woman asked me this question, and I kind of like do this body scan. Why do I love myself? I don't know. I'm not sure. So I kind of went inside and I scanned up and down. Do I love myself? And I couldn't kind of like find anything. So I said to her, I said, I can't remember exactly what I said, but something like, I think I probably said, like, I'm not sure. I don't have any sense that I don't love myself, but I can't really find any sense that I do either. And then I kind of reverted to my Brene Brown, like whoever I'm sort of currently obsessed with, I become like that.
I hear you.
This kind of spell. It's currently it's Wendy Kennedy. That's Harris and energy, other channels, mediums, kind of stuff. That's another story.
I did.
There was so anyway, but yeah, so I said to my colleague, my friend and colleague, I said, yeah, I can't get any sense of whether I do or what. I don't have any sense that I don't love myself, that I dislike myself. I don't have any sense I love myself either. But I do believe, this is the Brene Brown quote, I do believe I'm worthy of love and belonging.
Yeah.
I came out with that. And I think she just went,
You got a bit of work to do, sister.
About it later that day, and there were a couple of things came to mind. One is I had this sense of relief that I hadn't found evidence that I did love myself because I wasn't felt embarrassed to say so.
Wow, interesting.
I'm reminded of, and I've mentioned this to a few people, and most people had the same memory of being in a schoolyard.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this insult at the time was like, oh, Jackie loves herself.
Yeah,
so
Jackie's up herself.
Do that, and you
Yeah.
nothing like to anyone listening to this, I'm running across my arms and I've got rubbing my hands up, but you turn your back on the person, so you make out that they're making out with themselves. Such a I didn't know the term narcissist as a 10-year-old, but the message was really loud and clear. It was wrong to love yourself.
Yeah.
So did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Jackie's up herself. Yeah, Jackie's up herself. I'd be like, what? I can't be up myself. Like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just crazy. And this story comes to mind as well. At that same school, isn't that bizarre? Where did you go to school?
I went to an all-girls Catholic school in Auckland.
So I was in Wellington. I was spoken to Christchurch, and they know that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember now. I remember saying to other girls, "Oh, so and so's up herself. She's so up herself, like that." And now, like I would look at her and think, "Oh my gosh, she's go girl," like I'd be total hype girl for her. Like, I'm like, go for it.
That shadow work, and also I'm in a very do feel free to bring me back to the point. So I do go in a long circle. I usually get back to the point where I sometimes lose track and drift off into space. But you did ask about embodying self-love. I was going to rip off another small story, but I won't. But isn't that funny? Because especially with that thing, you turn your back and running your hands up.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't sound regular, so, but that's an embodiment of unlove.
Freaky, eh? So freaky. And I'm raising two teenage daughters. So I tell them these stories. I say, this is what happened when I was at school. This is the sort of thing that we normalized in school. And I see it not so much in them because I've put in lots of energy into them around this sort of talk, but I see it in their friends. And I actually just had a conversation with my youngest daughter yesterday, 16, and she's noticing what she's noticing. Like she'll convey back these scenarios and I'll be like, oh, can you see what's happening there? And she's like, I can totally see what's happening there. And this is where I'm so passionate about Heart Place Hospital, because it is those that are in the front line of our most vulnerable citizens, so those who are in education, who are in health, who are parenting, so that we can actually quickly change this dialogue. And with our next generation. They're our change makers. I had one of my oldest daughters said something the other day, and she said, "Oh, it was dodgy." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do about it? Because you're the change maker. You're the next generation. What are you going to do about it?" And I really know, this is a knowing, it's in my body, that they are the change makers and the chain breakers. However, they need the light at the top of the lighthouse. They need some people around them who are encouraging them and acknowledging this. And I think coming back to my Matt Trump moment, at the time, I thought I was wrong, bad, and broken. Whereas now, all I think is how amazing and awe-inspiring my body was. That it redirected me from where I was at. So I was playing small. Like I was a nurse manager at a very, like, it was still a very three-dimensional space, whereas I can multi-dimension it easily, and all our service providers are that. They're traditionally trained with cutting edge modalities attached to them so that we can open up and normalize and be examples and the light of being multidimensional beings on this earth having a human experience.
Actually, I just want to show you something. Actually, speaking of lighthouses, this artwork was done to me by wonderful Pomeranian woman, artist, yellow. So that's me straight here, and she's got put on the lighthouse.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Looks like you've got a pyramid in there too.
Yes, yes.
No. Amazing. Interesting. I pulled a couple of cards actually before we started. I pulled from Kuan Yin. I don't know if you know her. And it was the radiant moon of compassion that I pulled. Kuan Yin sits upon a radiant moon of compassion, pouring forth the spiritual strength needed for you to liberate yourself from lower vibrational energies of fear and judgment into a vibration of freedom, love, and peace where you naturally belong. You're being urged to use this power now to grow spiritually and free yourself from a situation that you that could draw you down. I thought, oh, that was quite cool now that we've talked about, loneliness and belonging, and self-love, liberation. Yeah.
Yeah. So just, no, I know of what you're speaking. I haven't studied you directly yet. But this whole thing around, so after this colleague of mine asked again, do you love me? No, as I had a few realizations. One is, as we just discussed, I realized I had a sense of relief that I couldn't tell that I did love myself, so I would have been embarrassed to tolerate that because of that whole narcissism. And one time I was trying to explain the concept of unconditional self-release, to a Auckland University academic and practicing clinical psychologist. And she initially thought I was talking about narcissism.
Interesting.
And this is an academic and practicing.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I've done a podcast with an oncologist who's done a whole lot of somatic training, and I asked her. I said, "Oh, where has your, how have you been received?" And she actually said it's her psychology colleagues that have been her most challenging with her integrating somatic support into her practice. So, yeah, I found that really interesting.
I don't think that's unusual. I mean, good to kind of own that and deal with. Saying I've been, one of my previous lives, I was a police officer. And my biggest challenge were the people I've worked with, my police officer colleagues. I mean, I was a terrible fit for the culture, for several reasons. I'm really glad I had the experience, but also, I mean, obviously hopefully most people who work in environment is not like the police, but even Hal Rogers, who came up with personal client-centered therapy, which is effectively and it's called unconditional regard for client.
Mm-hmm.
It was the main counselling modality I was trained in when I joined Lifeline, but in this wonderful, I've only read one of his books, actually. What do you know? It's right on top.
Ah.
On becoming a person.
Uh-huh.
And I found it's quite hard going, more a series of essays and lectures that he gave. But and one of them he talks about, he finds it quite easy to have unconditional regard for his clients.
Mm-hmm.
Finds it less easy to have unconditional regard for his students, and he finds it very difficult to have unconditional regard for his colleagues. So, you know, and that from, you know, Carl Rogers, who probably they're certainly key in bringing the concept of unconditional self-worth, self-regard, kind of mindfulness, if you will, to the West as well. Concepts.
So, yeah.
We've all got our way of bringing it in. So this experience of having difficulty with your colleagues, I think A, it's common, and B, shadow work.
Yeah.
And sort of we're slowly getting around to how but and certainly shadow work is up there, but that thing around I already mentioned unacknowledged shadows. So, you know, what we either in a more positive way admire in someone else, or in a less positive way like envy in someone else. But again, those are unacknowledged parts of us. So those are clues that, oh, actually I've got that, like I'm everything. So that bit out there that I'm admiring or envying, pay attention to, you know, to it myself. But also there's also the suppressed shadows, and it tends to be more shameful stuff as well. So my partner who came home and almost interrupted this podcast, but he's not again, he didn't. He is a wonderful man, and amongst many things, he's my muse. You know, if I want to know what my subconscious is getting up to, I just look at like whatever my partner's doing that's pissing me off at the time. That's exactly what my subconscious is getting up to. Like if I'm really annoyed with his negativity, it's not, guess what? I'm being negative. And it's quite very, when you get your head around that, it's first of all, it can be quite a shock. All this stuff that we've been judging other people for is like, oh, that's my shadow stuff that I've suppressed. So first there can be shock, then it can be quite a humbling period. Damn it. And then in terms of like, you know, embodying the self-love, you know, we've got to love, you know, it's my quote, you know, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that's unconditional self-love, loving all of our parts, and especially the parts when you're most ashamed of, and that we least want people to know. I mean, with your realization after your Big Mac awakening,
Big Mac.
It's like a McDonald's, isn't it? So your Mac.
My maiden name actually, McIntyre. So
is a thing. I lost my train. Mac trucks and trains. I lost my train of thought again. Embodying, embracing all of our parts, especially those things. In terms of part of my awakening was, I was doing my PhD. I was still doing Lifeline, and I was like yourself, and like many healers and therapists or whatever. It's like, oh my God, this stuff is so powerful. Like these tools I'm learning at Lifeline, and I'll probably plug this on my net. I said based on, I mean, a little bit of cognitive behavioural therapy and a little bit of ACT and stuff, but based on the personal client-centered therapy, a bit of motivational interviewing. And it was so powerful, it almost, I didn't almost, at times, it scared me.
Mm.
I so for the training for Lifeline back then, so what it is now. So I started Lifeline about 2005 when I started back at university, and after a shitty divorce, and I'm sorry.
I forgot about that connection. That's right. It's magical now. We put magical codes all around it. So
Process around that. And one of my key, I mean, of course, there was a number of realization points. One of them was realizing how powerful these tools were. So training to go Lifeline, it was 3 months of part-time training. Like every week there was like an evening, like Thursday evening, and just once a month there was a training weekend or something like that. I did the easy QA thing, so there was a few assignments to do. So that was our 3 months of very part-time training before getting on the phones. And it was very quickly very clear how powerful this having unconditional regard was. And like I said, it wasn't like almost scary. I didn't physically feel scared sometimes where people, I've got very clear memories of like I stopped in 8 years from 2005, so 2017 or something. People saying at the end of the call, I've decided what to kill myself tonight. I was talking to you. And they hadn't even mentioned suicide at that point. And just going through this horrific stuff. And the power, also the power of bearing witness to people's pain. Again, that just that unconditional regard and validating their suffering is real. They are real. And so it was shocking. It was shocking to me. But then it was like, okay, Carl Rogers stuff been around since the 1950s and before. I mean, in this form, and certainly very controversial at the time as well. And he talks about being attacked or his beliefs, accused of being a mystic and other terrible things.
off with his head.
Unconditional love, shocking, terrible. What an asshole. Dangerous, or because it is a dangerous concept, but it's very liberating.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so in 3 months, very part-time training, I've been taught these powerful counselling tools, and they've been around since the 1950s and before. And why don't the public know about them? And it was at like kind of at that. So I was literally asking myself that question: why don't the public know about this stuff? And that kind of and I came up with a number of reasons as to why that was, including being one of many being you referred to someone having difficulty with their colleagues. So all of the petty politics within, of all places, psychology. All the stereotypes about why people go and study psychology in the first place. But also I was very lucky that my undergrad was very so I came through doing a Bachelor of Science, majoring in psychology, and then went into health psychology for masters at postgraduate level. But I still had, so my undergrad still had, I had social psychology, cognitive science, neuroscience, behavior science, very importantly. And what I saw was like in clinical psychology, and I thought, wow, the answers to that clinical psychology problem are over there in behavior science. That findings don't just apply to rats and children with autism. They're useful for people who are a little lower in autism as well, which is most of us. Why aren't the disciplines talking and communicating? Of course they are communicating, but not enough. And the relationship between the different. I mean, I frequently say psychology is the biggest discipline in the world because anything that involves people involves psychology. And the crazy things we do in the same things we don't do. My stepsister studied architecture, and I was sort of qualified. And I was sort of talking about this, just sort of attitudes. I said, well, that's psychology for you. She said, oh, yeah, I found some psychology in my activity, you know. But with the psychology, so psychology is the biggest discipline in the world. So consequently, there's all these sub-disciplines of psychology.
Yeah. Sounds like you've done them all.
Pardon?
Sounds like you've done all the sub sides to the psychology. Like you've done clinical and behavioral and
There's many more. But what I saw is like, I saw but I did see that, as I said, this clinical psychology problem, the answer's over there in behavior science. Why aren't partners talking? And one of the reasons for that is I saw while there is some communication, of course, but the relationships, the interdepartmental relationships are also characterized by competition.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And competition in terms of competing against rather than the more pure sense of competition in terms of competing with. Now, competing against for the top students and scarce funding. So consciously or unconsciously, I'm not going to share my stuff with you. In behaviour science, I get a lot of value in behaviour science, a lot of the behaviour modification stuff, which is very complementary to the spiritual stuff that I now got into about 5 years ago, not long after I met you, coincidentally. And being outed out spiritual having, such a hard-won science PhD. I mean, I got, can I swear?
That's right.
I think I got fucking cancer during my PhD. I mean, caught very early, resolved with unpleasant minor surgery. And I also around the surgical time, I knew about the research. I can back up all my spiritual concepts like unconditional self-love and we're all connected and blah 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 with the science, just really handy because I really anti-spirituality. In my case, the few people I knew who considered themselves spiritual were not very leaky, but also quite they did not have good emotional regulation.
Yeah.
Really aspirational for me. So and that was cool. I really kind of feel about it. So but again, looking at the barriers to why this life-saving information isn't been around forever and is known by some segments. Why don't the public know about it? And so I started looking at the reasons why the public don't know about it, and we just talked about one of those reasons, like the competition departments. Just one of the number of reasons, but also how to overcome those reasons. And then I also realized, and I referenced back to Brene Brown, and this big part of that the power of their work. I mean, kind of, of course, in this culture of conditional worth, you're only good enough when you're always achieving and never failing. Be vulnerable, unconditionally love yourself. And of course, Brene Brown came to fame with her first TED talk on, or at the core of it, vulnerability and shame and connection. And that was just been, I've analysed her major talks. I literally got through notes and made connections and like she does, actually. But her first TED talk came about, she'd been at a corporate workshop training on the core of creativity, which is courage, which is vulnerability. And she was on the plane coming back with her husband, and she was scheduled to do this TED talk. And she was like, said to her husband, I was going to plan on doing my normal kind of academic, the standard deviations and, the, predictors and whatnot. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to talk about vulnerability, and I'm going to be vulnerable while talking about vulnerability. And apparently her husband, Steve, looked at her and said, why would you do that? And it was a reasonable question, because I've got this academic persona and career and everything. I put it out there that I had a nervous breakdown when she discovered that she wasn't who she thought she was as a result of her research.
Mm-hmm.
I had that moment at a tantra workshop, which when I found out, that's when I found out that I wasn't as laid back as what I was. He part of my identity is complete fabrication. Experience for a week. No drugs involved. That's another story. Brene Brown, but she did. So that's what kind of shot her to fame. She felt like I've just been teaching people about the importance and vulnerability and how it's the core, the essence of creativity, and courage. I can't go back to the rest of my life and put on my academic armor and just make a mockery of everything I've just been telling those other people to do. I can't be that. I can't be that hypocrite anymore. So she did it, and of course, I'm sure most listeners have heard of Brene Brown, and that TED Talk skyrocketed. I think it's almost 73 million views or something now. And she freaked out when the numbers started climbing, and also, amongst other things, she realised, as one of her friends pointed out to her, that she was a terrible role model for vulnerability. Would destroy the cassette tape, whatever it was. This mentioned the media speech was on. That also helped you realise how much left that she had put it in plain small.
Yeah. And that's where bravely and courageously I created these podcasts so that we could tell these stories. So and you've like jotted in all these little tidbits, and I'm like, oh, I want to know more. I'm curious because
I know about
part of my pretty much. But that's part of human nature, isn't it? So and of course definitely our generation, and then for generations before, it's always been kind of don't air your dirty laundry and have this perfect persona, and that was my healing journey. I was kind of like, wow, like actually the more I share this, the more I share that I feel this way, and these parts of mine are showing up, these awe-inspiring parts that I actually am so grateful for, because they allowed me to survive to every point in my life. And I'm feeling more lighter, and I'm feeling more enlightened, and I'm feeling like I've got more energy to share, and I'm feeling like I'm a better healer and a better carer and a better mother and a better wife. Like, why aren't we normalizing this? And that's when I just really stepped into my true power and created Heart Place Hospital so that that others could feel safe and comfortable. And I know for me 8 years ago, when I stepped into those places, and they were the only places I knew, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like they were soft lands. I felt it was crunchy. I felt huge judgment, and I actually felt worse. Not little did I know that there was this, backdraft that once you pop, you can't stop, and once you take take that wound, open that wound, then you've kind of got to address the past. And I hadn't been prepared for it. And then there was no integration time at all. It was kind of like, right, your time's up, you're out. And knowing me now, like I'm a big integrator, like I marinade for a long time, and I want it to settle and to land, and I want to embody it. So, and that's what Heart Place Hospital is. It's bringing back that innate nature, the indigenous ways. This is like you said, none of this is new. It's the inner knowing, like, if we go in, we're never going to go without. And really, really providing the opportunity of people being able to witness this type of living. Yeah, the liberation. And like you said, like I think now back, like if we were liberated back when we were at school, there weren't places that felt safe. Yeah.
I do, yeah, and I think it's also important not to parent or whānau bash, like which, to be honest, I
No winning. No win.
Because, all doing the best we can, or the
Totally. Yeah. And I say that to my daughters now. I say, I wonder in years to come, like what you'll look back on and say, well, it's good she did this. I said, I didn't get a manual. No one gave me a manual.
Yeah. But also I want to go back to that moment where I had that realization again during on Brene Brown, this whole thing around these tools that are life-saving, being where forever so the public know about them. But I did reference Brene Brown, and I think the power of her work was her vulnerability, which she was kind of tricked into because she thought, well, what's the worst can happen? Maybe 500 people will watch my talk. She wasn't allowing for like 73 million. Anyway, but I realized that what made her work have such a reach and to resonate with so many people was the combination of data plus stories.
Yeah. Thank you.
Data the other way around or something. And so I realized I was going to have to share what I knew with the public. And I was going to have to tell my personal stories and my most shameful stories, the stories that I least wanted people to know about. So I'd done. And at that point, like literally at that point where those brain synapses connected and I had that realization, I had an anxiety attack.
Wow.
Like literally I had anxiety. When I made that, okay, these are the barriers to the public knowing about this life-saving work. Okay, how do we overcome those barriers? Oh, okay, Brene Brown's doing it. The key to it is she's got the data, she's got the scientific research to back it up, as I have. And she's put her very vulnerable stories to it. I mean, she does have caveats around that, around like, don't share stuff that you haven't done processing around so that it's not going to be destroyed, as she almost was when she read the comments.
Yeah, I ate a whole tub of ice cream.
And so kind of put herself in lockdown long before COVID after that, her therapist and her husband said, after Taupo or other places, don't read the comments. I'm like, yeah, I've done all that. Yeah, I'm
good. Keep on.
She jumps on, she's reading the comments, and they're just the most, this Botox, so you could join with them, what's 2 kilos or 2 kilos or 1 kilo or whatever, or at least, I feel sorry for your children, somebody should kill her, just,
Brutal.
That's brutal for preaching unconditional self-love and vulnerability, but also this comes back to a lot of the persecution stuff that a lot of us, healers and creators don't have. There's in the whole deep historical context to go away, which doesn't just disappear overnight, but it is there. There is. But I said I didn't have a full-on panic attack when I made that. Like I didn't think I was going to have a heart attack, but it was an anxiety attack, and I knew for my work to have legs, to have reach, I was going to have to add my most painful stories to my scientific data. Stuff works, and I've cut, but I'm probably at the point now, and here you are again in my life, in a visceral way, where I can be kind of not Teflon for everybody, but like Teflon for the haters. I'm kind of at the point where I'm not really that interested in the haters, so I can have compassion for them the way I did with sex callers at Lifeline, and consequently, the haters, the online haters. So, I mean, I've been struggling. Well, I probably talked to you about it when I met you 8 years ago, to write a book, climate change, to get all this information into this book and get it out there. And I've just been crushed. I was crushed or crippled by what I now understand is the soul wisdom of procrastination. Having helped many people overcome procrastination, of course, the embarrassment I couldn't do it, and having published 2 books, academic, a master's thesis and a PhD thesis, and first class honours, and with academic publications and journal articles and whatnot. So I know how to write a book, and I done it. I quite enjoyed it, parts of it. And I just coming to write a book for public as opposed to academia. I just was crippled, and my thoughts would go to the haters, how it was going to be haters, basically, full stop. And intellectually, I knew this shouldn't be such a big deal, but again, drawing on, before I what past life stuff, or just family constellation work type stuff, intergenerational stuff.
Yeah,
just my generation. But I've also realised that somehow I could have forced myself to finish my book even a couple of years ago. I don't know how I could have done it because I just couldn't force myself to do it. And I now know if I could have finished and published that book even a couple of years ago, I would have been. I hadn't done enough integration. I wasn't integrated my part sufficiently. I wasn't sufficiently healed. I now know, and some things happened to show me this, that I would have got some nasty feedback. And at that point, before I was, more integrated, more loving myself professionally, it could have derailed me to the point that I never wrote another book.
Yeah.
So looking at it as I do now from a more holistic spiritual perspective, and with a very different view, not all procrastination is soul wisdom, but how I've been protected from things that I wasn't ready for.
And I'm always saying to people, look at the bigger picture. Look at the bigger picture. So I had a young person disappointed that they didn't get their driver's license the other day because they made a critical error. And I said, look, I know you're disappointed that you didn't get that win today. However, you may be in that critical situation in years to come, and you'll remember that time that you need to take this action. So look at the bigger picture. And I do that the same with the movements that I'm creating. It's interesting again that we're reflecting back on 8 years ago, and I look at that bigger picture and I go, everything's making sense. It's making sense, yeah.
Even Steve Jobs at one of his Harvard commencement speeches or something, and again, Steve Jobs, like everyone, is not to be emulated in all ways, like not his personal hygiene habits, and washing his face in toilets and not bathing and stuff like that, People don't have to be perfect for us we can cherry pick attributes anyway. But he did say in one of his speeches, to the students, it's only looking back then you join the dots.
Yeah.
But once you kind of get that,
yeah,
I am delighted to be where I am now. Obviously, it's a really powerful, transformative time right now.
Monumental historical times, I call them.
We're here for a reason. We're here for work. I've joked for a long time. People like, want to do it. I just this enigmatic smile and I'm seeing the world. But depending on who I'm talking to, I will add, quite truthfully, it started with myself. But that is true as well. But also coming back to this theme of how do we embody self-love, and there's this wonderful acronym, ABS. Now, it's not just air braking systems or whatever. It stands for attend before solving. Or solving. So, yes, I do talk to people about the big picture and what are the benefits you're getting from this and what you're learning from this challenge, and to view it as a challenge and an opportunity rather than something negative. And what if this is working for you rather than something that was happening to you, like shifting people out of victimhood into an empowering phase, which is a really powerful way to reduce chronic stress as well and boost your immunity. That shift in subtle but powerful shift in mindset. But it is important to attend to our feelings. Like if someone's really, especially if someone really gets that and they are really crushed by something, really upset by something, we've got to tend to the upset. And that's where, like, again, and then coming back to this sort of central theme of how do we embody self-love. And so I've been using a combination of parts therapy, shadow work, and tapping a lot to do just that. So a lot of it's about, we've got a massive source, and that'll be like my biggest takeaway for the listeners and watchers, to actually is around the expressive writing. And you know about expressive writing? Have you research about that? So brief recap, I was very lucky with my colleagues at Auckland Uni in the health psychology department. The health psychology was actually in the School of Medicine. It's not actually in the psychology department, reflecting the kind of the mind-body interaction. And I sold my soul to health psychology when I just in a psychology lecture, they had a guest lecturer from health psychology, and he was talking about the pain, sort of psychology and pain. And I had at that point, years ago now, 2005, I 20 years ago, I had no idea on the role of psychology and pain. And it just grabbed me viscerally. And so that was the moment. Health psychology, it's got everything. So I did a 30-year for health psychology. Health psychology around pain. But here I am all obsessive again. The embodiment thing. So a lot of it comes back to mindful self-compassion as well as sorry, so I was looking at my health psychology colleagues. So the health benefits of expressive writing, which is actually writing about not regular journaling. It's like writing painful, terrible, awful things that have happened, and especially things that you may have never told anybody else. So this has been studied extensively for about probably about 40 years from now. But for a long time, there'd only been subjective self-report, psychological improvements in well-being after doing this kind of expressive writing. And typically, people might feel worse immediately after having done it because they've just got unearthed all this
backdrop.
But typically, after the initial kind of flushing out, they feel a lot better. But for a long time, there was just like subjective self-report, reports of benefits. But then more recently, so I'm going back, so this was around about 2013-ish, bringing in my supervisor, especially is coordinating a lot of this, bringing in more rigorous objective assessment of function and healing. So the study, I've written a blog post about this, which people can easily access on that actual instructions, expressive writings, and research article. I think from memory, I must have reread the news. It's something like 2 groups of people, randomly, of course. I think healthy, slightly older people, and to get an objective measure of immunity, they did a punch biopsy, a plug of skin out of the upper arm of each person. Now, the theory was that wound healing, of course, is affected by immunity. So, it's our immunity is compromised, our wound healing is slower. And the theory is that chronic stress is a major detractor of immunity. Chronic stress compromises our immunity. Ergo, if we relieve the chronic stress, that should boost our immunity and improve wound healing. And suppressed emotions have long been kind of posited as a major cause of chronic stress. So ergo, express the previously unexpressed emotions, should relieve the chronic stress, should boost immunity, should improve wound healing. So to test this, I like to get an objective measure rather than just self-reports. Oh yeah, I feel better after.
Yeah.
I just skin. I saw the photos, pretty gross. And measured how quickly they healed. So now the two groups of writers. So one was the group of expressive writing during the most painful, awful things that happened to you, especially stuff you haven't told anybody. And the second group was like the control group. So I think the two groups, and that was just like normal, kind of like time management, journaling, like no emotion. Like I woke up at 6 a.m. I black coffee, no sugar. I had toast and peanut butter and drove to the audience, so like no emotion. And they measured a number of things. I don't know the biological details like this human cytokines and stuff like that. I know a lot more about that, an awful lot more about that than I do. But also measured the a dermatologist assessed rates of healing on photographs of the healing wounds, obviously blinds to what condition the person was in. And I can't remember the exact number. It was something like 2 weeks after the healing, after the wounding, people in the expressive writing groups, something like about over 70% of their wounds had fully healed, compared to something like only 30-something% of people.
Awesome. Love it.
Not only is that, so something like, let's round it up, so about 70% fully healed 2 weeks after wounding, compared to about 30% fully healed non-emotional time in great condition. So not only is that a significant difference, the size of that difference, the effect size, which is actually far more significant, because significance is very easy to manipulate by having the larger the sample, the more, just as you've got, the more chance you have of finding a significant result.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
The finding a significant difference is far less important than the size of that difference. And most people don't know that. And that's something that big pharma takes full advantage of. It's not like that they can afford to, have huge numbers of people in the trials, and then the size of the difference they might find might be tiny and be of clinical significance. But again, most people don't know that. They're like, oh, significant. Anyway, so with this trial was around expressive writing and immunity and wound healing. So not only obviously was it a significant difference, but the size, the effect size of the difference was huge. And something like, not only to get that, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 times 20 minutes of writing.
Wow.
So, 2 or 3, I can't remember. So you cannot buy a drug
that can do that.
That will boost your immunity that much.
Yeah. No, cool. Hey, our time we're going over time, and these are great examples of whole health living. So that multidimensional whole health. So looking at our
wholeness, integration.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, like I really want to go back to this because I love internal family systems. So our parts, looking at all our parts, that they're awe-inspiring, that they've got us to survive to this part of our lives. And then that shadow work, like looking at actually what is activating or triggering or producing a charge, and taking that space, whether it's expressive writing or whatever it is, whether it's tapping, whatever resonates with you, whatever's come across your path, then boom, we've got this evidence that increases our immunity, and therefore then we're seeing less disease, we're seeing less need for tertiary, even secondary healthcare, and we've got this community of self-healers, and we've got a simple and sustainable healthcare system, and that's why I include educators in at Heart Place Hospital. I really believe it starts at us, but it starts at education, and we're case in points. We're 70s, 80s girls, and the messages and the codes that we got in those times were quite different. But that was to refine us, not to define us, And for us to be here now in this time, where the world's shifting. And I mean, I'm just blown away with some of the conversations that people are having. And a friend took her cat to the vet the other day and with a bladder infection, and the vet said, "Oh, is there some animosity or fighting going on in the household? Because this energetically, that's where it sits in our animals." And I was just like, "Wow, this is cool." So it's really exciting to be around for this time. I'm pleased I hung in there and followed my breadcrumbs, and I'm really proud and super excited with how far I've come in 8 years. And grateful for all those opportunities, all those learnings, and super cool that our paths crossed and then have again. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And just to end, if you want to just share with our listeners what's coming up in your heart place and how people can find you.
Oh, currently one of my things I'm doing at the moment is just started running art classes, just completing the first month. And currently they're in person, but I'll be getting them online, and they're like a mad cocktail of abstract acrylics with art therapy light. Sometimes not so light. So fairly excited about that. And I'm also, funnily enough, I've been using the phrase, I'm following the crumbs on this, except I ain't got no breadcrumbs. My crumbs are Black Forest Cherry Gatto.
Oh, I love it.
But people can find me, my main website, WordPress I'm updating is rebecca-stafford.org. You can also find me if you Google Dr. Habit. And I'm also setting up a Dr. Habit account on Substack as well. So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and
usual places. Yeah, and we'll put them all in the link. We'll put them in the show notes as well.
Ready to finish my book now, and it's going to be partially channeled and like having talked about coming on the spiritual closet. There's a whole lot of stuff going on, so really important connection time, and I'm feeling loved up. I'm feeling good.
Yay!
Oh, with people, happy to connect, and if any of what I'm saying resonates with anyone, yes,
you're totally very cool. All right, thank you so much, Rebecca.
Yeah.
See you soon. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Later. Namaste.
Namaste.